Friday, obviously, and I have to tell you, I went to Pennsylvania last weekend to do a talk I gave at a Tucker convention at the AACA Museum in Hershey, and it was a lot of fun. After I got back, realized that I had a cold. Yesterday, I had congestion in my chest. Today, I woke up, had no voice. So I sat upright, walked around a little bit, talked a little bit, eventually got enough of a functional voice to shoot some videos. So I apologize. I just posted 2 videos on my main channel. And this video here where I've got this sounding voice. And some people are going to say, Steve, your voice is so annoying. I can't watch this. I apologize. But I'm like Lou Gehrig. I have not missed a video on a day, literally in like 3 or 4 years. So I actually thought, what would I do if I can't talk at all? If I have zero voice? I could come out and mime something? But I have to tell you a funny story. And I spoke at this convention. And while I was there, I met a lot of people. And so my talk was about the legal issues that Preston Tucker faced in his career as an automaker. And of course, he was prosecuted criminally. Famously, you've seen that if you saw the movie Preston Tucker, The Man in the Dream by Francis Ford Coppola with Jeff Bridges as Preston Tucker. And he was acquitted on all charges. And that trial is the center focal point of that movie. It's a big dramatic moment. And then in my talk, I talked about that, but also the company was pushed into bankruptcy. And the bankruptcy was being conducted at the other end of the same courthouse he's being tried in. There were days where there were Tucker things happening at both ends of the same courthouse. Bankruptcy, criminal trial. So I talked about the bankruptcy and how that plays into the story. And then I talked about how after all of that happened, he filed lawsuits for defamation against the various publications that defamed him, including the Detroit News, Reader's Digest, Collier's, things like that. And his allegation was they defamed him by calling him a crook and saying he'd committed fraud. And so during my talk, I made an offhand comment. It's always the offhand comments that get me in trouble. But I made the offhand comment that there was a point in time where Tucker was in essence dealing with 3 sets of attorneys. And I jokingly said that if he didn't have financial trouble before, he certainly would have it afterwards, trying to pay all those bills. And so I did my talk, and it was very well attended, very well received. I signed books afterwards, met a bunch of people. And a person came up to me afterwards and was scowling, just scowling at me. And I said, oh, hi, how are you? And she said her name to me. She goes, that's my name. And I'm like, okay. And she goes, I'm related to one of the attorneys in the story that you told just now. I said, oh, okay, congratulations. Like, why are you scowling at me? She goes, what you stated was false. You made some false statements up there, and I'm very upset. I said, oh, okay. What statement did I make that was false? I'm curious. I'm fascinated. What statements did I make that were false? And she said, you implied that Preston Tucker paid all his bills. And she said, my relative, who was an attorney for Tucker, never got paid a penny by him. Not a penny. Not a penny. And I said, well, did I say that Tucker paid all of his attorneys in full? Did I say that? Because I didn't. And by the way, if you confront me on a talk I just gave, I remember what I said. And I had said, in essence, because now it's been a week and a half, I said in essence that if he had financial troubles before, they would have gotten worse by all the attorneys. Attorneys don't help you financially because of their cost. More attorneys in your life is not good financially. I said, I didn't say that though, did I? I said, I made a comment about the crushing legal bills. I didn't say they got paid. She goes, but you implied that they did. I said, well, when you first came up here, you said you made false statements. Now you're saying that I didn't make false statements, that I made implications that are false. And she goes, now you're talking like an attorney. I said, well, I am an attorney. And I introduced myself and said I'm an attorney, so she knew that. I said, I am an attorney. Accusing me of talking like an attorney is like saying, you're talking like a human. You're talking like a man. You're talking like an American. I'm all of those things, yeah. So she goes, the point is that my relative never got paid by Tucker, not a penny. And I go, well, did your relative represent him in the bankruptcy? She goes, no. Did he represent Tucker in the lawsuits against the Detroit News, Collier's, and Reader's Digest? She goes, no. I go, so you don't know whether or not Tucker paid those other attorneys. You just believe that he didn't pay your relative. And she goes, he didn't. And I said, okay. I said, but you understand that my statement is still true. It's correct. I simply said that there'd be crushing legal bills, and I'm sure there were. Are you implying there were not crushing legal bills? And she goes, you don't get the point. I said, educate me. What's the point? And she said, my relative never got paid. And I said, did I ever say he did? And now she's like really upset. And by the way, I don't believe that for a second. I don't. Because I'm an attorney. And if someone came to me and said, hey, Steve, I'm about to be indicted and tried in federal court. Trial's going to last months. Can you represent me? I wouldn't say, sure, and I'll bill you at the end of the trial. I'd say, well, if you want me to do that, I got to set aside a huge block of my time where I can't work on other cases. Therefore, I need some money up front, often referred to as a retainer agreement, a retainer. I need some money up front. And it would be highly unusual for an attorney to agree to represent somebody in a trial like that without getting any money up front. That would be absurd. And the weird part is that I don't believe her relative ever sued Tucker for the unpaid bills. And if I had to guess, and this is speculation on my part, if I had to guess, what happened was, even after Tucker was exonerated, people still didn't like Tucker. There were people who thought he was a shyster. They just thought he got off. They're like, but, there were people who thought that. I don't think that, but there were people who thought that. So I assure you that the attorney who represented Tucker at the criminal trial probably had people go, oh my God, you represented Tucker? And he probably said, oh, but he never paid me. As kind of like I'm a victim too. If I had to guess, that's what really happened. But I believe he got paid. But I didn't say that he got paid. I just said it now for the first time. So the woman got mad at me and she walked away. And I talked to some other people and I said, has anybody here talked to her? And I had somebody go, yeah, she's yelling at a lot of people. Like she came to this convention just to yell about how her relative was mistreated by Tucker and the community. And so a little while later, I was standing near the front counter of the museum and I was about to check out and pay for a t-shirt I bought, which I wore on camera about 3 days ago. And I was standing near a group of people who were talking and I heard somebody go, have you met Steve Lehto? And I turned and looked and it was a guy talking to her. And I looked over and I said, yeah, we've met, kind of laughing like, yeah, we've met. And as I was standing there now, I'm kind of part of their conversation. And she started explaining why she's upset. And if you watch the movie, Tucker, the Man in His Dream, by Francis Ford Coppola, the scene of the closing argument is done by Preston Tucker himself, which did not happen in real life. In real life, his attorney gave the closing argument. That's what happens in courtrooms. And she said, she goes, when they had Preston Tucker deliver the closing argument instead of my relative, they were implying that my relative was incompetent. That's why she's upset. And I heard that and I'm like, well, I'm not going to get involved in this. But everyone knows that Hollywood does things for drama. They weren't implying that her relative was incompetent. The movie makers were saying, here's a man fighting for his life. And instead of putting the words in the mouth of an attorney, let's put the words in his mouth. Now, if I was the screenwriter and they said, Steve, write this scene, I would not have written it the way that Coppola did. I would not have done it with Tucker making his own closing argument. Because to me, that doesn't make any sense legally, but I understand why you did it dramatically. But for someone to see that movie and take away from it, oh, Tucker's attorneys were incompetent because he insisted on doing his own closing argument. shows that somebody is overly sensitive and take your pick, doesn't understand how movies work. But here we are. That movie came out about, 30 years ago. And 30 years later, you go to a convention to yell at a guy who wrote a book about Preston Tucker because in a statement he made during a talk, he said that Tucker had crushing legal bills. And you implied that he paid them. So, other than that, the convention was a lot of fun. I saw 8 Tuckers there. 4 of them drove. They had them out driving around the parking lot. Met all kinds of other cool people in the community. Had a great time. I was impressed with how many people are still interested in that story. And so I've written a book about it. Look it up. It's out there. Preston Tucker's Battle to Build a Car of Tomorrow. And of course, I always look the wrong way. That right there, my friends, is a Tucker. That's a Tucker. So that's my excitement at the event. And it's kind of strange because almost anywhere I go to speak on any topic, it doesn't matter which topic I'm talking about, I'll get somebody who comes up and is upset with me. And some of the stories are quite funny. And someday I'll tell the story about a woman who confronted me at a talk I gave in a very, very small town in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, who I believe is mentally ill. And I will tell the story and I'll call her mentally ill. And if anybody says, hey, Steve, I think you just slandered her by calling her mentally ill, I will say, well, she wants to sue me. She can. And I will defend the case saying truth is a defense. I believe she's mentally ill. And I believe I could get a jury to agree with me that she's mentally ill. But that's another story for another day. And unfortunately, with my voice, the condition it's in, I'm really, really short of breath right now. And the problem is that if I force it, I start coughing. And I can feel it coming on. So I appreciate the fact you stuck through me with this unusual situation with my voice. My voice will be back tomorrow. So for those of you who just watched me on the Volt channel, next Friday's video will be crystal clear audio. And my other videos will clear up sometime about Saturday afternoon, I think. So I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.